Well, I don't have any other way to say it other than that sucked. Let's talk about Michigan's loss to Ohio State right here on this episode of Locked On Wolverines.
You are Locked On Wolverines, your daily podcast on the Michigan Wolverines, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Happy Monday. Well, not really, but still. Locked On Wolverines podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every day. I'm your man on the ground, Isaiah Hole, publisher of Wolverines Wire through USA Today Sports Media Group. Thank you to all of you who make us your first listen, and thank you to all of our everydayers out there. We do appreciate that. I know this one's going to be a little bit tougher in a lot of ways. Michigan loses to Ohio State 27-9. Did not go the way we predicted. There's some things that were in the game that I think jibed a lot with what Connor and I were saying, but didn't really completely go the way that we thought. And first off and foremost, massive credit to Ohio State. I'm not going to take anything away from them. I'm curious to see how they play against Indiana, because I've long been of the mindset that Indiana is the best team. I think they just don't get the credit because their name is Indiana. We'll see. Ohio State certainly has all of the capability in the world to take down Indiana, but I think that Indiana's it's going to be an interesting game this weekend. That's all I'm going to say. I'm not predicting one thing one way or the other. I'm curious to see if Indiana folds or if Indiana rises to the occasion against the Buckeyes in the Big Ten championship game. But all the credit in the world to Ohio State. Incredible team, incredible performance. They were going to start off with what the game was, where Michigan. I don't really know how to quantify it. We're going to talk about the game and for two segments, and then where Michigan goes from here after that. I'm getting a little bunched up here, sitting here in my chair. Nonetheless, I think that Ohio State played the type of game that Michigan, in a lot of ways, hoped it would play, right? Dominated the trenches. Absolutely. Dominated all three phases of the game, to be honest. Dominated. But really dominated the trenches. Michigan got no pressure. Michigan, I think what Connor said about the run fits was accurate. The problem was multiple here. Number one, you went from Jordan Marshall in the first two drives to Bryce Underwood, who was still fine. But ultimately, the biggest thing for me was that Michigan went away from running outside zone and stretch plays that were clearly working. Somewhere in the second quarter, they said, you know what, we're running right up the middle. And they never went back to the well, ever. And I don't really understand what that was. It was very... Sherrone Moore and Chip Lindsey pulled a Chip Kelly and Ryan Day from last year of, we know that we can get them on the edge. But we're just not going to. We're going to run into Caden McDonald, who is the strength of that defensive front, over and over and over again. So, number one, they got out of it there, because I think Michigan's best chance in the game was to continue to attack the outside. Same thing as Ohio State last year. Same thing. And Michigan decided that, the offensive brain trust in Columbus should hold their beer. To me, that was ridiculous. Bryce Underwood finishes with one less yard than Davis Warren did last year. 62 yards. That is nothing short of malpractice. Now, again, I don't want to take anything away from Ohio State. I think that the Buckeyes were absolutely incredible defensively. And I was afraid when I was making fun of Matt Patricia and the hire that happened back in when that happened. I'm like, man, this feels, as I was doing it, I think I even said, this feels an awful lot like Ohio State fans making fun of Jesse Minter and saying LOL Vanderbilt and all of that. And it didn't work out for them. So I have to give him his flowers too. Matt Patricia did an incredible job, especially early, of recognizing what Michigan was doing well and doing whatever it was to take away from them. So that was masterful on his end. So kudos to Matt Patricia and the Ohio State defensive staff. Incredible performance on that front as well. But malpractice when it comes to what Michigan was doing in the passing game. I know there were some moments where Bryce Underwood could see or didn't see guys that were not open, but like there were some times that there was one play in particular, Donovan McCulley was like wide open in the middle of the field and Bryce went to his check down. Kind of went back to happy feet, right? Ohio State was closing the pocket, but they got really like one or two snaps or sacks on this. Really, Bryce was impatient the entire game. There were a lot of moments where if he, like even when he kept the ball, if he would have just waited for the block to develop instead of just trying to play hero ball and run, then it's a different story than what it was. But that's not what happened, right? The moment was too big for him, unfortunately. And he looked a lot like he did, but worse in the MSU, the Purdue games, and to some degree, Oklahoma and USC. But I don't think that the coaches did him any favors of really giving him like a game plan that was going to work for him, unfortunately. And they went away from the one thing that was working that I don't, if I haven't rewatched the game, I'm not in a hurry to do so. But it's one of those things that they went away from the one thing that they were doing that was working. Kind of same with Ohio State last year, trying to get Travion Henderson on the outside, going tempo. They go away from it and they go to the only things that aren't working. And then eventually nothing was working. So you have that on one end. On the other end, you have the defense, which started out strong and then faltered mightily as Ohio State went on, excuse me, like a 13-minute drive? Michigan had 4 possessions total in the second half. Ohio State did everything Michigan had done to it. So it's kind of insult to injury. And there were obviously a lot of injuries, right? Like as much as I really am not taking anything away from Ohio State. Michigan was more injured than it's been in previous years. Because yes, you've played games without Blake Corum. You've played games without Will Johnson and Colston Loveland. This was a little bit different because you were without your top defensive player in Ernest Hausman. You were out without Rod Moore still. After he at least got some play this season, you were without Justice Haynes. You were without Max Bredesen. Certainly an arm tied behind their back. Maybe it's a little bit different or closer. I'm not sure that it would have been. I think Ohio State had an itch to scratch and it was going to get there one way or the other. You do wonder a little bit about the momentum changing with before you Buckeyes come at me here. It's like the general consensus, not just among Michigan people. If you just do a cursory search on social media, everyone like just getting home and watching halftime shows and stuff, everyone was saying that should not have been a Jeremiah Smith touchdown. That's where they took the lead. Now, again, I think Ohio State probably would have leaned on and won anyway because they were able to do a lot of different things that were obviously they leaned on Michigan's lines. They dominated Michigan's lines. Michigan couldn't stop the run. It became very evident in late the first half, even though Michigan still had the rushing advantage. It became evident that Ohio State was going to win the rushing battle. To me, I said to someone with about 5 minutes left in the first half, I said, Ohio State's going to win the rushing battle. It became very clear to me at that point. The game was done. It was lost. Even though Michigan was still in striking distance, Ohio State was getting the ball back. 5 minutes left in the second quarter. They were going to get the ball 2 times. The only opportunity Michigan had after that was, hey, we got to stop them like they did coming out of the locker room at halftime. We got to score. But like no sense of urgency in general. No killer instinct. How much have we talked about that from Michigan and the coaching staff? That's what we're going to get into next. Let's do that here in just a moment. But before we do, the World Cup is coming back to North America for the first time since 1994. And with 48 teams for the first time ever, it's going to be massive. But let's be honest, getting tickets is usually the hardest part. That's why the Game Time app is clutch, finally giving fans a real advantage when it comes to snagging seats. With Game Time, you can track price drops in real time, get alerts when great seats open, and buy tickets the moment they hit the app. It puts the power back in your hands and makes going to the World Cup realistic instead of impossible. You pull up the app and the layout makes it so simple to scroll through matchups and compare seat views, pick a game, tap a section, and have your tickets locked within minutes. No confusion, no hunting for fine print. The seat view feature is a game changer. You literally see what the pitch looks like from your exact seat before you buy. Prices include fees up front, which I love. No last second surprises at checkout. So take the guesswork out of buying World Cup tickets in every match, concert, or event with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, download the app, make an account, use the code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off. Swipe, tap, ticket, go. Download Game Time today. Two things that I think are really interesting when it comes to how this game went. Number one, Michigan's longest play from scrimmage was on the very first play. That was it, the longest play from scrimmage. Number two, Ohio State scored 27 points, which is not, could they have scored more? Absolutely, right? Like they were taking the time off the clock. Michigan couldn't stop any part of the Ohio State offense. I think they punted once in the game outside of the interception. But 27 points. Michigan beat Ohio State 42-27 in 2021 and 30-26. I think it was the final score. Might have been 30-24. Can't remember. One of those, 30-24 in 2023. So they held them to the point total, essentially, that you would hope would allow you to beat Ohio State. Offense is a mess right now. And I understand, again, the injuries. But, I don't think that the game plan was particularly good either. Again, once it became evident that you're down to Bryce Underwood, you're not really putting him in a position to succeed here. You've got to find a way to do something, and you can't be going 3 and out every time, right? But really that wasn't the biggest thing for me. The biggest thing for me was Michigan had the early opportunities. You could feel Ohio State was shaken early in the game. Everyone in the stadium could feel it. You could see it. They were shaken. But Michigan did the Tom Fornelli using the Simpsons meme, you don't win games with field goals, Simpsons cha-cha dance. The first field goal, fine. But the second, when you get that pick to start things out again, my brothers in Christ, you have to find a way to score a touchdown there, one way or the other. Whatever your best plays are, that's what needs to happen because you need to lean on them. Keep them in panic mode because they were in panic mode. Keep them there because then they get desperate. Then Ryan Day's back to where he was and he's not able to run his game. He starts doing things. Yeah, they've still got superstar receivers, but things kind of change a little bit. And then maybe you can actually time some blitzes and things of that nature and get them because they're just in a desperate spot. Ohio State just settled in. Julian Sand did incredible. 73-ish% pass completion if memory serves. He outside of the first couple drives, calm, cool, and collected. Just was able to go out there and just kind of do his thing. Little pressure. We looked at that right side of the offensive line for Ohio State for the last several weeks, and it performed great. Right? It's kind of like how Michigan's offensive line was last year in the game. Michigan's offensive line going into the game, you're like, weak spot, not good. And then they hold up against what had seemed to be a better Ohio State defensive line last year. So Ohio State, they held the Michigan defensive front at bay. There was only 2 times really that Julian Sand, I felt like he was under pressure. One was the play before the interception, the first play from scrimmage from them. The pocket collapsed in a hurry. And then there was one other time where Troy Bowles hit him after the fact. And there you go. But It's this is to me, and we'll get more into where Michigan goes from here. This is to me like I wrote an article about this and said, like, basically just chastised Michigan up and down, left and right. And I had at least one person from what I had looked say, like, it's too reflexive on this one game. No, this is the game that you're reflexive on, because none of the other games matter. Michigan exits the regular season without a signature win. Now, could it win the bowl game? Possibly. But when you play that way and you look like there's been zero progress from, I'm not going to even say New Mexico, but Oklahoma to Ohio State and all of the tough opponents, the toughest opponents you had, like, you want to see, okay, you lose by 7 points to the number 8 team in the country on the road. Okay. When the number 1 team in the country, who you supposedly prepare for all year long, comes to town, you need to be able to see some kind of step forward regardless of the injuries. I understand you're without a lot of key players. I understand that you have a lot of youth, but you can't sit there and rattle off all of the youth you have when you spent half the season, if you're Sherrone Moore, saying these guys aren't freshmen anymore. We don't call them freshmen anymore. They've had a whole year. So you can't sit there and say we don't treat them like youth, and then after the game say, oh, we're young. I'm sorry, that doesn't fly. You can't speak out of both sides of your mouth like that. So it's disappointing from the fact that Michigan felt very ill prepared in this game. I don't have a ton of problems necessarily. I had some comments some DMs, people kind of placing the blame on Wink. And yes, the defense, it got. I'm not saying it didn't get got. It's kind of the same thing that we've been talking about all year. The defense has held up enough. Holding Ohio State to 27 points should be enough, and it wasn't, because the offense got nothing going outside of 3 drives. One was a short field where they were pretty much already in field goal range. So my thing here, if Sherrone Moore and his thing is smash, and is, like he said, and I promise you one thing, you're going to smash. And then you go up against Ohio State, where you've had a decided, quote, smash advantage, where you have dominated the fronts on both sides of the football. And then you get dominated like that by them with not exactly low-rated recruits on either side of the ball for Michigan, the offensive and defensive line. Then what are we doing here? Because your calling card failed miserably. So at that point, you have to take more than a hard look in the mirror. You've got to make some massive changes, because yes, you have a promising offensive line. It's a very promising offensive line that year 2, year 3 should be very good. Defensive line, you lose a lot of those guys, but you need some difference makers. And right now, they didn't have them. Your star edge rusher, Derek Moore, who came into the game with half a sack less than Aiden Hutchinson did going into the game in 2021, completely absent in this one. And there was no David Ojabo to clean up the mess on the other side. As a matter of fact, then you had Jayshon Barham. I don't care what everyone said. Oh, maybe he was trying to show the ref what, no. I mean, Sherrone Moore says the ref grabbed him with both hands and he headbutted him. Yes, Jayshon should have been thrown out at that point. We would be saying the same thing if it was on the other side. So it's absurd. All right, let's continue on. Where does Michigan go from here? Let's do that here in just a moment. But before we do, the holidays always feel a little easier when you already know the perfect gift, and Omaha Steaks makes it almost too simple. It's a little suspicious. Whether you're treating yourself this season or sending something memorable to family and friends, Omaha Steaks delivers handcrafted perfection right to their door. And this week is the best time to jump in, because their cyber sale is here and the deals are huge. The quality is exactly what you hope for. Incredibly tender steaks, rich flavor, and meals that make hosting or weeknight cooking easier. And the variety is underrated. Steaks, burgers, comfort meals, sides, and desserts is one of those gifts that truly fits anyone. Honestly, it's the kind of gift that brings people together, and you don't need to guess anyone's size. Save big on unforgettable gifts with Omaha Steaks. Visit omahasteaks.com for 50% off site-wide and an extra 20% off select favorites during their cyber sale. For an additional $35 off, use the promo code COLLEGE at checkout. That's omahasteaks.com, promo code COLLEGE. Terms apply. See site for details. I do have to say first, this is the third segment. It's not the first, but still, congratulations to the Ohio State Buckeyes. I think that it's important that we bring some sportsmanship back and say actual congratulations and give credit where it's due. Hence, I've been saying give credit where it's due. I met some incredible Ohio State fans and media that I hadn't met before. So shout out to Adam King from, I think, Channel 10, News 10, whatever it is in Columbus. The Big Nut, John, could not have been a more pleasant person. And comedian Matt Rife, who was there in all decked out in scarlet and gray. It was a pleasure to talk to there for a few minutes, represented by my former agency, where I worked, not where I was represented, but where I worked. United Talent Agency. The best. Might be number 3, but it's the best. Anyhow, where does Michigan go from here? I don't know, man, because you just got your manhood taken from you in a way that I don't think has happened. Because even USC wasn't good. You could at least chalk up week 2 Oklahoma. Okay, you're at Oklahoma. You're within striking distance, but nothing's really doing. You're getting some plays here and there. This wasn't a situation like this one where Bo Jackson had more yards than the entire Michigan offense. Not great. But, you've got all that. You get to go to USC and it's kind of okay, well, it's a bad matchup as far as some of these things are concerned. The things that Michigan is predicated on didn't work. So what do you do? Right? You need to bolster that defensive front. I think you've got some youth like Nate Marshall and, Trey Pierce entering senior season. Maybe Dom Nichols. I don't know. Lou Gardeck-Pai. They've got to figure out something as far as tackles and edge rushers for sure going into next year. You feel good about the linebackers. I'd get a lockdown corner out of the portal. Even if they keep who they have, unless even if Shamari Earls who was in street clothes this game, even if he's ready to go next year, I still think you need to get an established number 1 corner. Offensive line, I like where they're going, but I would get a center because obviously you got Greg Crippen graduating. I think a year of the strength and conditioning should be good for those guys. You obviously need some receivers. Andrew Marsh, 0 targets, unacceptable. I don't care what, man. It's unacceptable. I don't care if he's being triple covered. You got to find a way. If you can't scheme a guy open, right? We know that Ohio State's going to Jeremiah Smith and or Carnell Tate. You know that they are. And yet they still get open. Whether they're schemed open, they get themselves open. If they're in single coverage, double coverage, you got to find a way to try to get the ball in the hand of your playmakers. And Michigan failed miserably at that as well. Same thing with the tight ends, but I again would like to see them, as much as I like the emergence of Zach Marshall and Deacon Tonielli. Deacon Tonielli, by the way, after the game, voice of reason and leadership. I watched him sit there and yell at his guys, guys, 364 days. We got 364 days to start, to prepare now. Everyone else, other guys are wanting to defend midfield and they want to fight them and stuff like that. They're not going to let them come over and plant their flag and all that kind of stuff, which was happening, right? Kind of got half tackled by Sherrone Moore trying to get in there to get his guys off the field after Ryan Day had his whole deal of we need to. I didn't see that until the aftermath. Ryan Day saying we got to get your guys off the field so we don't have some problems. But Deacon Tonielli showing a lot of leadership after the game, which I thought was really cool to see. But Michigan probably needs much like they felt like they hey, we got Colston Loveland. He's the heir apparent. He's the star. They still went out and got AJ Barner. They need to revamp a lot of that stuff. Running back room, whether Justice Haynes comes back or not, you've got Jordan Marshall, Savion Hyder coming in. You'll be fine there. But they need a little bit everywhere else. And certainly some coaches got to go. I'm not going to tell you which ones. I'm not in the business of calling for people's jobs specifically, right? But coaches got to go because they were ill prepared. And that falls firmly upon the guy at the top, right? Like you get the praise when things go well, but you sit there and say you get the blame when things don't. Well, guess what? Sherrone Moore, you're going to get the blame. I'm not going to sit here and say based off of the game that Sherrone Moore deserves to lose his job. That's not what I'm saying. But there has to be a lot of accountability that happens, because this is the game that you like. It doesn't matter if you're 11-0 going into it. Like, I understand college football's changed, but we've seen how if you lose this game, down in Columbus, like they were still crowing about Michigan even after winning a national championship. Rightfully so. That's what this rivalry is supposed to be. So you've got to do more than just looking in the mirror. You need to take a lot of action if you're the Michigan football program. And you need to figure out where can we improve, and we have to do it in a hurry, because the college football's changed. You don't have time. You don't have years to have that climb anymore, because the playoffs expanded. Things are different. NIL, transfer portal, it's a different world. It's a brave new world. You are not afforded the ability to take the time to figure things out. You got to figure it out right now. As far as the bowl game, it sounds like Michigan's almost as locked into the Citrus Bowl as you possibly could be. Pretty much looks like it's going to be Michigan, Texas. I welcome that. I welcome that challenge. I welcome the big name matchup. CBS had Michigan against Vanderbilt. Well, that would be... Vanderbilt's been good, man, but like that's a boring freaking matchup in terms of name power. And I understand Vanderbilt and Indiana and all these schools can get a heck of a lot better now, and they can actually compete. Like one thing about college football hasn't changed. Like the name brand matters. So we need to see Texas. Really is the hope. And you win that game, at least you end the season on a high note, and you aren't in these offseason doldrums like you were in 2016, 2017, 2018, 2019, right? 2020. At least you're sitting there saying, maybe we can build off this. Now, they beat Alabama with basically the same defense, and it didn't work out. So we'll see. We'll see what changes happen in this offseason. Last thing I want to touch on, I don't mean to make this like give praise to the rivals thing. Like, listen, if you come to a show and you want me to just like openly hate on somebody because they're wearing the colors we don't like, even as a Michigan alum, I'm telling you, I don't care that much. That goes to you for the Ohio State fans that were immediately in my mentions after the game, spewing nonsense. Some of you like violent vitriol. You overestimate how much I personally care about this in that type of way. It's like I was talking to Adam King about it, and I said, like, back in the day, and I brought this up on the show recently, like, remember my freshman year at Michigan, lost to Michigan State. Right after I called my buddy who was also a freshman at Michigan State, and I was like, we'll get you next year, right? Like, that's how I look at things. But Michigan State, that's a great hire, Pat Fitzgerald. I have a picture of me and Pat Fitzgerald together. Wasn't posed, but I think he's awesome. That's exactly what I said to his face. We'll see how that works out, right? College football's a little bit different since he was last around. I know people point to his record. I think he still did a masterful job at Northwestern. Might make that rivalry a bit tougher in the coming years. But I find it hard to hate on Pat Fitzgerald. So kudos to MSU for taking quick, decisive action and actually getting a dude who I think can coach his tail off. All right, that's going to do it for us today. We'll be back with the mailbag tomorrow on Tuesday. We will talk to you then. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. Peace.